Good morning.
I got refills on that too.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best coffee in the world.
Damn sure wakes you up.
Oh, hell yeah. And then I'll put you back to sleep. So let's go.
All right.
Fucking, what'd you study while you're here? Wait, no, first off, where'd you get that Oni ring?
I think you mentioned to me that this was an Oni ring last time we saw each other.
Mm-hmm.
The internet.
Fuck yeah.
I think I got it for like $2.99. So.
What?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, some Chinese website, some shit like that.
I'm glad it actually came in.
I'm pretty sure a man died for this ring, but it's pretty cool, so worth it, right?
That makes it cooler. Oh, fuck yeah. What'd you study when you were here?
I studied opera. I was over at Boyer for a year, and then I did media studies and production for a year. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really go to class that year, so I studied opera.
Gotcha. What does a college study of opera look like? Is it just teaching how to sing? Is it the...
Yeah, so I had to take foreign language. I had music theory at 8 a.m. every day. It was like... I pretty much had like 16-hour days most days. I had to learn guitar and piano. I had to learn... Well, and I knew some piano, but they had me relearn, which was... Piano was the only class I failed my freshman year because I didn't do the scales the way they wanted me to finger them. But
okay.
I've been playing piano for like 10 years.
Did you play it and just kind of feel it out when you started?
Yeah. Like, I knew how to play the scales, but they were like, you got to put your finger here on this note. And it's like, okay.
I'm going to be bothersome for a moment. When you speak, would you mind being a little closer to the microphone?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah.
That's perfect.
Excellent.
But so how did you learn piano initially?
I started when I was like 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
I did the Peabody, which is a institute in Maryland, music stuff. That's where I'm from, Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
They have like a program for kids, and I got accepted at like 6, and I studied there for a year, and then my teacher left because they were on some bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I studied with her for another 9 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, I took...
So you can play a thing or two.
No, not anymore. It's been some time. But you couldn't pay me to play piano at this point. That's kind of how it was. No,
Was it like you're whipped to do it, so when I look at it now, it's like, ah!
No, and my teacher was great, but she had definitely a thing for classical,
mm-hmm.
and that's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It actually made it a lot hard. I think it delayed when I picked up guitar or another instrument because I was just like, fuck that, you know?
That's a fucking weird thing when it comes to learning a skill. It could be a skill that you love, but if it's taught to you in a fucked up way, mm-hmm. then...
Well, it wasn't even fucked up. She's a nice lady, but...
Oh, I should say fucked up in the... yeah, that's probably not a great
I'm not
way
trying to
say
correct you. I'm just saying, you know...
No, because that's an important correction, right? She wasn't being very cruel. It was just the subject itself was like, oh, God, I hate classical music.
A lot of eating my vegetables, and I have always been more of a chocolate man.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a fucking way to say it.
Yeah.
What kind of opera did you...
So I studied, a lot of Italian stuff. I couldn't tell you what a lot of it was about. Mm-hmm. There was one about, chasing the moon because love is unrealistic or some... It made us... Yeah.
That's
a lot of
confusing.
Yes. A lot of them are, like, part of grander, like, operas, right? So there's a lot of context that you miss, even if you were to translate it. So a lot of it is just the art of learning how to carry your body when you do that sort of thing, because it's a lot of focus. Those folks are really disciplined.
When you say carry your body, do you mean like putting on a whole show with each and every piano press?
No, it's not like a performance in that aspect. It's like you have to be very aware of where your muscles are tense. You have to be very aware of like your lungs and your air. You have to be aware of your stance because you can change how you actually inhale or exhale depending on your stance. You have to basically, you have to be kind of, there's kind of a weird thing where you have to be zen, but you have to be like razor focused too. It's a lot
calm razor focus.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, ninja focus. Exactly. Yeah.
That's one of the strangest things I've heard about piano playing, that from someone who played when they were young, that you have to have your fingers very relaxed even while you're moving very quickly.
Mm-hmm. It's the same for guitar. I think it's true for a lot of instruments where you just have to kind of, if you add tension to it, it just makes everything you do a lot harder.
Weird. I've heard similar things for martial arts. Like when you're in the middle of the fight, to be relaxed, I've heard a lot of people say is better than to be really tense and like fired up.
Yeah.
Are there any times where you think it's better to be tense in musical playing or singing?
In music, probably there's a tension because I like hard rock, punk, metal stuff. Like that's my duh. Right? Yeah,
I got that gist when we met. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
In a mosh pit.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely. There's a tension that can come with that, but you have to be aware of it. You have to kind of ride the wave and not get carried away because that tension, for me as like a singer or a guitar player, is like that very easily translates into fingers and or neck tension, which I can't have. So it's got to be a balance.
Have you ever heard?
You got to have the audience tense, but you not so much.
Audience tense, but you not so much.
That's right. That's the trick of it right there.
I wonder if James Brown was tense. Have you ever heard his singing?
Yeah,
where it's like the screaming. Yeah. I really wonder, like, how the fuck what's the technique? What's the form for screaming?
I think a lot of cocaine is probably how James Brown did it.
Oh, I heard, what did he call it? Maybe Gorilla Glue? Something along those lines. He said he used to huff Gorilla Glue, which was a nickname for meth, and then go riding on the back alleys of his country roads, so just dirt roads, revving his engine. And
those are the parts he can remember.
Yeah, right? But fucking, do you scream in your singing at all?
No. So I do something that's like, it's called fry singing. It's like a lot of singers do that.
Is that like
Yeah, exactly. But the way I do it, so you can do a scream through that. I haven't trained myself to do a scream, but there's a way to add distortion to your voice doing that. So that's what I do.
Can I hear an example of it?
Oh, I'm not warmed up, so probably not a good one.
I feel it.
That's not it.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're relaxed when you're doing that?
I was not warmed up, so not as relaxed as I should have been. But for a show, I would warm up and get myself in the proper stance, and I would be standing. And it would be a whole different thing. But yeah, that's just an example of.
I got you. I could hear that rough, crisp part of and it doesn't hurt at all when you do that?
That would have hurt had I kept going and pushed more. I've been practicing a lot with it, so I can push it a little further than some people can as far as starting out. But I was not doing it as properly as I should have been for that example.
Got you. You need like a 10-minute warm-up standing.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the fun one. I more just sing for fun, but I need to get more into the vocal practices themselves. They seem like a really important piece.
It's a deep rabbit hole. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Why'd you stay in Philly for music specifically?
Well, it was that or moving back home was a big part of it. But also this DIY scene here is crazy.
What's DIY?
The venue we met at is a DIY.
Oh, okay.
Kids throwing shows.
Gotcha.
And that scene is huge, especially right now. I mean, it's been blowing up the last year or so. So I'm glad I'm glad I did stay. But it's been, there are shows to go to every weekend. But now, it used to be, all right, let me see if I can find a good show this weekend. Now there are so many.
Which do I choose?
Exactly. How many can I make tonight? Yeah, right. That's what it becomes. Which is really excellent. I mean, I'm really glad I did stay because, yeah, the kids who are just a couple years younger than me get it, I think, a little more than people my age do. So it's been really wonderful to see that happen.
When you say get it, what do you mean? Like just getting the whole
Their
scene?
attitudes are a lot. By and large, I'm not talking about specific individuals, but I think by and large their attitudes are a lot better. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why I think that. I couldn't exactly point to a reason for it, but I have definitely felt. I think the scene now is a lot more accepting. I mean, maybe that's because it's bigger, but it's not. You don't have to be as careful either. When I got here, you had to be a little more wary of where you went and who you were spending your time with, because some of the crustier places were not so safe.
Crustier places.
Yeah.
Dude, how'd you even find out about the place we met? I only found online in a strange sort of way?
So I used to go to a place called the Tabernacle.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it definitely, it's still technically a venue, but they only do acoustic shows because they got busted for noise. It's one too many times, apparently. Not my call.
Heavy bass.
Yeah. And so they moved all their shows to Cecil. But I was a regular at Tabernacle, so when they did all that, I had several bills that I wanted to see. They got moved, so I went over there, and I met the people that run that place, and they're great people. I'm really happy that I found that place, because that place is super cool.
There's some cool cats.
Yeah.
You have a band yourself?
I am working on putting a project together right now, in between projects. I was in a band before the pandemic. Not that the pandemic, I think a lot of people use that as an excuse for things, which it can be. But I am working on it, and I'm in the process of recording demos right now to get that project really rolling.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to... I would think that would be so cool to fuse opera with a metal style or a punk rock. So you're kind of telling a hardcore story on stage. Is that something you would...
that guy's called Dio. That's been done.
Dio?
But Ronnie James Dio. Yeah. That's who that opera kind of thing is. Pat Benatar also studied opera. There are a few. I think a lot of what I'm doing isn't even... I've worked on vocal stuff so much in my life that what I'm really interested in now is songwriting and guitar stuff. And then doing whatever vocals over top of that, as opposed to having them. I'm writing one and then the other is coming in later. If that makes sense. So I don't know. I guess that doesn't address the technique thing you talked about. I think rock and roll technique and opera technique are very different, and I would say I don't use a whole lot of opera technique these days. A little bit every now and then when I gotta get the bass going. When I gotta fill a room like that, I'll do some opera stuff. But I like to get away from that. It's almost something that I am conscious to avoid because it's a sound that I don't want. Yeah.
What kind of band are you going more like? When you were singing, terrible names. ACDs?
I do like AC/DC a lot. I'm a very big Bon Scott AC/DC. That's their first lead singer, and their first 5-6 albums with him are, some of the best rock and roll that's ever been written for sure. I'm a big Motorhead guy. That's huge for me. Caius is big for me. I like Black Flag a lot. Yeah.
Henry Rollins is the fucking man.
Yeah. I love the whole Henry Rollins era for sure.
Dude, have you ever seen his stand-up, This Is Not Happening?
I have seen a lot of his stand-up. Yeah, he's got a couple of specials on Prime, too, I think. Yeah. I've seen his This Is Not Happening, the punk rock hyenas, where he takes the acid with the lady. Yeah, that's a great story.
Yes,
for sure.
He's a fucking great storyteller, man.
He really is. Yeah, he's one of those Renaissance men. Everything he touches is really good. He was in Sons of Anarchy too, and that show went downhill a little later. But that season that he's in is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of role does he play? I'm assuming
he
just
is
a
a
badass
Nazi bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He looks like he could pull it off.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which is funny because his personality is not Nazi-ish at all, but he looks like he would be.
He can definitely pull it. Yeah. He's. Yeah. It's. He sent. There are only a couple of times in that show that I got chills because it's here and there. His acting is really good in that season, and he's kind of like the second tier bad guy. So there's the main villain who's the brain, and then Henry Rollins is the big dog. Yeah.
Oh, he could definitely pull that shit off.
Yeah.
Oh, ooh. I'm thinking art meaningful to you. What art has played like an important role in your life? And I'll lean more towards music. Has there ever...
Right. There's definitely visual art that does it, but, music is where I spend virtually all of my energy. Like,
I need to... Yeah.
All right. Oh, am I? Oh, okay. It was an angle thing. I got you.
Boom. Art.
Okay, now we're good. Yes.
Resuming as if
the singer that doesn't know how to work a microphone. That's right.
No, you're
Get
good.
your tickets now.
Yeah. This is only this is a really directional mic, so it has to like aim directly at you.
I got you.
Since I record outside, I didn't want one that picked up noise from all over. You'd also always be hearing wind and whatnot. So anyway, meaningful piece of art and music to you. Not just that's fun, but maybe that's held something a little deeper than surface level enjoyment.
Yeah, I would say not even. It's a great album. But I think what it was indicative more for me was a moment where my view changed on what I was doing.
Wait, which album?
Queens of the Stone Age, the self-titled album. That's the first one. And I was a fan of Caius before I was a fan of the Queens of the Stone Age, because I'm a real fan. But no, it marked a change for the style of music that Josh Homme, whose instrumentation I really like, was doing, and it coincided with kind of a philosophical change for me that sent me in kind of a different direction. Yeah. So I guess how I would explain that is when I came to Philly, I was escaping a lot, right? And I came looking up to some people maybe I shouldn't have looked up to and stuff like that. And, I got rock and roll hedonism, right? Yeah. So I lost a couple of years to that, which is fine. I had a lot of great times. But it came down to a point where I had to get serious about what I was doing. So not that I don't still, participate. It's just a matter of keeping a balance and not, being very focused in what I'm doing.
Not trying to join the 28 club or 27 club.
Exactly. Yeah. Live fast and keep going. That's the idea. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude. Because that's a big question, right? How to live a beautiful life that's still long. How to live long and prosper.
Sure.
And to not just be bored out of your fucking mind by doing responsibility only, but then to not be the hedonist pig who's like doing nothing but in the moment wild pleasures.
There's a balance. And the thing is that what I found, and I would kick myself for saying this if 17-year-old me were hearing this, but there is some truth in if you do work that you love, but it's work, and then you go and you have your time to go a little wild or relax, both sides feel a lot better.
Yeah. No, fuck yeah. There's a feeling of maybe earned isn't the right word, but it's the best I have at the moment. It's like you're earning your relaxation playtime. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's deep biological roots for that. And I would think about when you want to eat food, right? That would be your work, and maybe you enjoy hunting, but then the pleasure when you come back afterwards and you're dancing around the fire or whatnot in the hunter-gatherer days. Like, we've evolved to work before play, or else you would die for much of our history.
I would agree with that. Do you mind if I smoke a cigarette?
No, fucking do your thing.
I think I will.
Yeah. So, okay, you said you looked up to some, I will call them false idols. Why do you think?
I would say that is the perfect way to put it, actually. A really big part of and it took a long time. There was a lot of growing pain. I've really come a long way, I think. But I would say false idols is exactly what it was. There was a big part of me that looked up to, when you get into music or anything, but music, I think for me, I'll speak for me, there's an idolatry that comes with that. You look up to people, and if you love their music, then necessarily you're going to maybe dress like them. You're going to start doing behaviors like them. The problem with that is a lot of those guys are dead.
Right? That's a fucking tough question about who should you admire? Who should be your ideal? For example, if you look at a rock and roll star, they're having sex with the most beautiful people, they have the most enjoyable drugs, they make great music, but then they've also been divorced like 3 times.
Exactly.
They're not spending much time with their kid. They they're taking a little bit too much cocaine.
Joe Walsh is on a breathing machine, what I mean? Yeah. No, I think here's where I've gotten to with that is I think that there are things, and this is true for people that I know and people that I have a parasocial, I like their music, I follow their Instagram kind of relationship with. There are always things you can pull from damn near everybody.
Yeah.
But you have to be particular. And it's the same thing, that's the same thing I've learned with life substances and stuff, is you have to be particular about what's offered. And you have to be particular about what you do and when. And what you take from somebody, because a lot of people have really, really, really good points of view on one thing, but are complete hypocrites in another direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a weird tendency I've found to go down and sorry for interrupting you, I kind of glitched for a second.
No, that's totally all
All
right.
right. The route of if I find you're great in the few realms, then there's almost a desire I have to just listen to everything you say, right? And maybe that's to appeal to a dictator. Like, they're really good at something, so I just want to give you the reins and trust you to lead me in all aspects of life.
Exactly.
But like, oh, you might be really good at, I don't know, economics, making money, but you're pretty bad at family relationships and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely true, and musicians in particular are very flawed, openly flawed people. And I think a lot of it too is, as far as I spend some of my time when I'm practicing, I'll practice and I'll watch interviews, right? So I call it attitude cultivation, right? Trying to get a picture of how different artists saw the world and maybe how I can interpret that in my own way, things like that. I wouldn't have put it that way probably when I started doing it, but that's what it's become. And I think a lot of the time you can kind of put that down to era. A lot of the time, people who are saying flawed things are going to say a lot of flawed things in a period of time and then self-correct. So when you're looking at an artist and you're hearing things that they're saying that you disagree with, listen to an interview from 10 years on either side of that, because chances are they're going to have gone into it with a different attitude and come out with it with a different point of view completely. Okay, so now I'm curious about you. Why do you think that part of the hedonist side appealed to you so much? It still does. I actually think part of not just my job, but our job as the new generation, and I'm speaking about musicians now, new generation of musicians, is to reinterpret a lot of the ideals that music had in the 20th century, because there's a lot of good stuff there, but there's also a very dark path that you can go down that's not good. And I think also through the lens of, for lack of better language, like the woke thing that's happening right now, I think that there is a very real way to be conscious of social things and conscious of how the world is working and how we all have way more information now and how we all kind of have a really good route to empathize with one another, but also have that fuck it, let's party thing, you know? Because a lot of the old hedonism was, I'm going to party no matter what, and if you don't like it, fuck you, right? And there's a certain amount of that is good. You shouldn't always pay attention to when people are saying, hey, maybe chill. Not always, but sometimes you should. But you also can't be going so crazy that you're stepping on everybody's toes. I wonder if that had to do it all with the Cold War, where people really, there was a strong sense in the air that we're not going to live much longer. Like, the world might blow up soon, so fuck it, let's party as the ship goes down. I don't know that attitude's gone away. I think we're pretty doomed. I got to be honest with you. Okay, let's dive into that, because that is a common theme I've noticed, especially in a lot of art nowadays. A lot of post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic movies and vibes, things along those lines. But it really makes me wonder whether I fear sometimes we're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Life imitates art. Sometimes. So there's a degree, well, here's what I mean by that. There's a degree to which an artist has a responsibility to portray the world around them, at least as they interpret it emotionally. But when you have a large audience, or you have an audience, you also have a responsibility to paint the whole picture a little bit. I think, at least both sides. I think that, and even both sides puts it as a binary, and I don't think that's right either. But a more encompassing view. I think if everything you write is doom and gloom, that if you a lot of times in life you see what you look for. Yeah. And life as individuals and also as society is that way. If there's a general notion that society has, oh, we're all doomed, then yes. And the truth is that stupid optimism sometimes works. It really is. Being naive about things can make things better sometimes. Sometimes, right? And then how to put the finger on when is it the time. Exactly. How to be like water, as Bruce Lee says, and match the context. Yeah, right.
Why do you think we're doomed?
Okay. I don't know. Doomed was the word I used. I don't know. I think doom is in the air. I think a lot of people feel that way. And I mean, look around you. I mean, it's no surprise that people feel that way. A lot of things are really fucked right now. And it doesn't seem to be getting better.
Like what?
Well, there's some topical things I could bring up about this week. I'm not sure.
I am fine talking about whatever, so I leave that totally up to you.
Yeah, well, I don't even. I'm going to be cautious about what I bring up simply because a lot of that is very emotional for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to go down that road too much. You know what I mean?
You blushed as you said that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some very, very, very dark things that are going on. And I think here's what really concerns me. Isn't that there's a bunch of old men ruling the world and taking us to a very dark place. That's bad. Don't get me wrong. That is bad, and it definitely affects people's lives, and it is negative. What I think is the true evil is that becomes very easily in an individual's mind dog eat dog. It pits us against each other. You know what I mean?
So if you see the world as a place where the rulers are taking us to a point of hell and the rulers are only looking out for themselves, then I kind of have to look out for myself because I can't trust the people in power to look out for me. And maybe you think most people are like that, so I can't trust most people to look out for me.
Exactly.
And all I can trust is myself and what I want, and maybe very few people close to me.
People aren't willing to trust people right now, I think, is a big part of the climate that's going on. Especially in this country, I think people don't trust each other a whole lot. And there's some grounds for that, obviously. You know, always be skeptical of the people you meet, things like that. But I think, again, with the dumb optimism thing, you have to consciously choose to be open when it doesn't make sense sometimes.
Elaborate on when you think it would be good to be stupidly optimistic.
I think whenever you're meeting new people, sometimes you can hear something coming out of somebody's mouth and you're like, okay, so I can dismiss this person entirely now. There are some things that's probably true for, but I think most things are individuals in a moment, and people give too much credence to words in a moment or actions in a moment as opposed to looking at a human being as a whole, because we're all a lot more complex than
One
some of the shitty things we've done, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Well, then, would you call that... I don't want to say this to be needlessly opposing, but
Bring it on.
Right?
Yeah, right.
It seems like it's not stupid to... or dumb optimism to open your mind to the fact that people are more complex and there's much more to people than the parts of them you don't like.
Exactly.
And to find room for harmony, to keep an open mind for how can we live together in a peaceful sort of way. And maybe we don't have to agree on everything, and that's fine, even on some big issues, that there's still a potential to dance together, even with every step not matching. I'm speaking way too vaguely, but like, what problems are really worth going to war for, you know? And war both literally and just war of I'm here to crush you now and crush your points to the best of my ability. And I've heard people describe politics as it's in its core a means to avoid war. So we can have these people that want so many different things, but we're still able to come together and discuss and find compromise and common ground. And a lot of that does require trust. And so it seems to me that can be done stupidly. But I think there's a lot of room for intelligent optimism.
Yes, I think that's a really good way to put it, actually. Agreed. Yes.
Now, when you talk about how much information we have access to, I'm hit by people's negativity bias that a human will, in general, you'll remember negative things more. Negative emotion holds more weight, intensity, pound for pound than a positive emotion. And so when we have access to this incredible, vast worldly amount of information, there seems like people will lean towards looking at the negative, and we have a bias towards creating maybe an illusory view of what reality is because of our old wiring.
I would also say, and we're talking about wiring a little bit now, so this is what I'll say. I think that something that defines human beings as opposed to the animals that are around us is we have the opportunity to choose intelligence. We can choose to deny our nature. We can change how we are, and I think people remember that to a large degree. I don't want to give people no credit for that. I think we're getting a lot better with that. I think by and large, our generation for sure. But I think that there's when it becomes dog eat dog, it's very easy to go back to this is a food chain and I'm going to be at the top no matter what.
I heard one of the fundamental necessities for a functioning economy, for a thriving economy, is trust. Trust that I trust that my investments aren't just going to get wiped out from under me, so I'm actually willing to save up long term and invest in houses and businesses and things like this. There needs to be trust between business people so that they'll actually do deals and not just expect someone to stab them in the back. And so it's worrying to hear you say the thing about trust. So I'm curious, why do you believe that there is lacking trust at the moment or fracturing trust? Are you talking America specifically or the world?
I can only talk about America specifically because that's my experience. So I wouldn't posit to know about the world. It doesn't feel personal, so I would imagine that there's some tendencies in the world that are perhaps more true in America now, but perhaps not. I do think I'm trying to figure out how to word what I'm thinking. Can you rephrase your question? Maybe that'll help me.
Why do you think there's a lack of trust between Americans at the moment?
I think to some degree it can be necessity. I also think a lack of trust is very comforting. Choosing fear over risk is always going to be something that people are a little more comfortable with, I think, because it's what we know, whereas risk is definitionally what we don't. Trust is definitionally, it can be a risk. So choosing to not trust individually and in a larger scale seems like the safe option a lot of the times, but it leads us down a bad road, I think.
Interesting. Why do you trust me to do this podcast?
I got a DM from you probably about a week ago, and you were like, do a podcast. I was like, fuck it, let's go. I enjoyed talking with you at that party, so here we are.
Yeah.
And I like that you got a podcast talking about deep shit. Yeah, you can definitely pick my brain about that.
All right, cool.
Yeah, right.
So that's really interesting. Okay, so let's dissect this ground level root for trust, our positive interaction, right? We talked, we enjoyed talking with one another. We were literally in a mosh pit together, so we essentially danced together. There's a sort of bonding experience in that. And there's a lot to be said for first impressions, right? And just how do you feel about someone on first impression? And so that's making me wonder, what do you think are some of the main causes, aside from the beautifully worded way you just described of people tending to be a little more cautious? Why do you think some people aren't having that trust that we established between one another? Because there does seem to be a lot of specifically political tension in America at the moment, or at least I hear that a lot when I look on the interwebs and watch the news. And I'll be honest, sometimes in my own personal life, specifically when Trump was elected, there was a lot of hatred I never heard before in some of the inner circles, and a rage that was building up that wasn't really clear. A couple things why people are so unwilling to have rational discussions about. the issues at hand about Trump. Why was there a vulnerability for, not even a vulnerability, but why did people want to elect Trump in the first place? And what are some reasons why civil war might be a possibility in America, or why there's so much political tension? What have you noticed in these realms?
First of all, you mentioned civil war. I don't think civil war is going to happen. First of all, because they're cowards, and second of all, because they don't have it. Back when there was a civil war, cannons were what we were using, right? We have nukes now. I don't think civil war makes any sense. I can see there is a disagreement there. We'll get there. I think also with the Trump thing, with the right wing in America, I don't know that it's in particular, but I can only speak about America. I think that a lot of it comes from a buildup of lack of self-reflection. I think that's really what it comes from. And some of those most of the Trump folks, if you're criticizing their policies, the way that they interact with politics, the way that they interact with people who are marginalized, I think it comes from a very deep-seated need to not be wrong. I think it comes from, and I think if you analyzed how those people carry themselves in their personal lives, you would find a lot of lack of self-reflection. And I think that comes from fear. I think that's, well, if I'm wrong, what does that say about me? As opposed to a recognition that we're all wrong a lot of the time.
Has there been anyone you've seen that you've supported in the political realm?
Bernie, obviously, is the man. It's very hard for me, and I think this is true for a lot of folks. I just feel so jaded with politics. 20 years too early. I feel jaded about this stuff, and it's very, very. It's an uphill battle for any politician to impress me. A lot of the times, even the really, really what I would consider people who are pushing good policies, a lot of the times you'll hear them that they did this or that, and you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I can't actually think of a specific example which would be better in this scenario, I think. But I think that it's very hard to root for somebody you believe may do good if they're inconsistent about it.
Mm-hmm. Why'd you like Bernie?
Huh?
Why'd you like Bernie? Why did you like Bernie?
Because he's not inconsistent.
With what? Or what of his topics specifically did you support?
I think it's ridiculous that there isn't free healthcare in this country. I think it's ridiculous. He did a whole video about him going to Canada to buy cheaper insulin or whatever, and I think that is one of so many examples of the way medicine works in this country being completely fucked. It's really bad. Wages are lower than ever. I think what I really, really liked about Bernie policy-wise is what I really, really like about Bernie as a human being, which is that he does what he says he's going to do, period. Which is not true for virtually everybody else in that arena.
That has been a very curious and mysterious to me theme about politics as I've been growing up and watching it a little more. The acceptance of lying. Mm-hmm. And people always got on Trump's case because they emphasized how often he was lying or caught lying. But it struck me that even before he entered the political realm, politicians in general were kind of known for lying. And that was just, that's just how they are. But if you look at your own personal life, if someone lied to you with the frequency that politicians were known for lying to you,
and with the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to keep interacting with them or have them leading you places that are important. So that's a very strange part of politics.
Actually, this kind of goes to something I was watching recently. You know who George Carlin is? Yeah? Yeah, so George Carlin, there's a bit where he talks about Americans like their bullshit up front. And I think that it really has gotten to the point where we don't even look for not liars anymore. We look for people that are very clearly liars, but in a direction we like.
And at least they're obvious with it, right? At least they're upfront.
Exactly.
Weird. There's a weird part of politics I've noticed that it's in part become almost like a reality TV show. In fact, I've noticed that with a lot of...
Yeah, that wouldn't have anything to do with people we elect, would it?
I've noticed that with a lot of big problems in general, like wars being covered almost as reality TV, civil strifes, that they've lost the grip of reality.
Well, it's almost like they're scripted, too. But we won't get into that. Yeah.
Oh, what's the movie? I forget the fucking name of the movie where these people they're creating fake wars through the news that they're promoting in America. There were some big actors in it. Robert De Niro was in it. Some other people who I forget. But they literally made up an entire war to help certain people get elected. They had actors and scenes and all that jazz as they're watching the war. And I'm not going to say that I think that's what's happening in Ukraine, because I've heard some stories from people I know who live in that area. But it makes me wonder in general how often that might be true with other versions of the story. Just a lack of trust.
I don't even think you would have to hire actors. You just have to get the right camera angles most of the time. Show some guys shooting, but not the other side, right? A basic version of that, Yeah, I mean, I think war is propaganda necessarily. I mean, especially as it stands now. And it's so hard to get good information now. I mean, it's virtually impossible to understand what's actually going on in the world, because we're beholden to whoever publishes what's going on in the world, and they are almost always bought and paid for.
Do you have any sources you find credible?
Honestly, something that has really... I've had to stop checking the news as frequently, because I just anything that I put in my head is like, on some level, there's bullshit going on. And what I don't want to be is disconnected, but it's hard to stay connected when the only way to connect is...
And that gets weird. There's a great quote that goes something like, if you were to gather the worst pieces of information happening at any point in history, and first off, you would always have a constant stream of information, even if you were going to go back 100, 1,000 years. If you were to just scroll through the worst disasters, wars, rapes, homicides, etc., you would always have a full day's worth of information. 1. 2, you would always think the world's on the brink of disaster, that everything is hell. And when you look at the news, there's a comedian who makes the joke that news, why isn't it called Bad News Network? Because all you fucking see on there is bad news. And there's a lot of truth in that. Like I was talking earlier about our negativity bias. We have a bias to... we just burn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're good. We have a bias towards wanting to see negative information. It feels more important to us. So, when you're trying to get a grasp of what the hell's going on in reality, it seems like a small dose of news is a good way to go, at least to me, and spend a lot of your time figuring out what's going on in reality. Boots on the ground method, by kind of just going around, maybe talking more with people, looking around at your environment. Although there is a strangeness to that. I talked about this before. My dad lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis when he was a kid, and he said on the day of its peak, it was kind of just business as usual on the streets. So there is a bit of the fuck. If I go around and, the birds are chirping, it seems very peaceful here. The world could be on the brink of destruction and everyone's just kind of going about the normal life. Yeah. So how to sift our way through this vast sea of information.
A lot of the media, fear-mongering is the business they're in.
Fear and hate, I'd say, are...
they're very good tools to divide a population, so you don't look up. Which I think is the name of the game they're in.
Bread and circus. Have you ever heard the term bread and circuses?
I have not.
It's meant to describe, I think it comes from Rome. When Rome was falling, they would give the citizens free bread at the circuses and the Coliseum events. Then they would hold a lot more of them. So the everyday citizen, they always have, they have an interesting, entertaining show to go see, and they're getting free food while they go to see it. And while they're watching that and all engrossed in this, Rome is essentially falling apart around them. So it's, and that doesn't have to be that
an apt metaphor.
Yeah, bread and circuses could be a war that you're saying everyone focus on this war, but in reality there's much worse problems going on around it.
Except you can't even get bread anymore. That's right. Yeah.
Now you just get high anxiety levels, and
you don't even get lions, dude. You want to send some lions into the Ukraine? I'll watch that shit.
Lion with a missile on his back, just
flying.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. What do you think are... Okay, here's a heavy question. What do you think are some of the biggest problems in America at the moment? What do you think you're most qualified to talk about in terms of big problems going on? I'll say that. Even
music?
If it's, yeah, there you go. No, but that's fine. Even if it's on a more personal note and something you understand more in your direct community.
Yeah, so qualified is not something I am. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Uh-huh. I'm qualified to sweep and mop. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I think the biggest problem, it's so hard to pick. And I think even, asking the biggest problem, I'm going to tend towards more general that covers an umbrella. And I really do think trust is huge, to go back to that. I mean, I think that is interpersonally and on a larger level, everybody is afraid right now. And it is very easy to fall into traps when you are worrying for your life, worrying where you're going to stay, worrying where you're going to eat, And I think the biggest problem, let me be a little more specific, right now, in America, the biggest problem is the Supreme Court, period. They need to be expanded.
Oh, that's a weird one. That's okay, I'll tell you a story.
Or shrunk.
That shit gets so weird, man. Okay, I'll tell you a story about Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. So it was the Great Depression, and he passed a law that ended up being very useful for getting our country out of the Great Depression. And he made a speech several years after he passed that law because you could see the positive effects that came from it. And he said, this law was very close to not getting passed. The Supreme Court, if they just one person voted another way, it wouldn't have gotten passed. And then we would be still in a state of greater chaos and things would have gotten worse. So I think you guys should give me the power to put new judges into place, maybe add more, take out some of the older ones. They're old, they're overworked. They need new, fresh blood in the Supreme Court. And trust me, because I made this good decision earlier about helping the country through this specific policy, I'll make good decisions here. I have the best intents in mind, but they didn't allow him to do it. By and large, people thought it would be too much an abuse of power, as I think they polled the country. And that brings up a very interesting question of when you open the door to having people play with these very fundamental checks and balances, like the Supreme Court, it can become a slippery slope of who's getting to pick those Supreme Court judges. If you're expanding it, now it's favoring Democrats, but if the next Republican president comes into power, then now the door's been open, maybe now they can add some more judges that they want or get rid of others because they're overworked, they're not competent enough, and it becomes a very dangerous path. And I'm thinking specifically of some South American examples where some presidents ended up doing the same thing, same argument essentially, but then they changed the Supreme Court and they were like, well, the Congress also isn't getting some things passed I want.
Consolidation of power. It happens real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, first of all, the big thing that needs to change about the Supreme Court, two things. There need to be more people, and it needs to not be until death.
That's a weird one, right? Like,
why is that? Why is it like, oh, well, if they are older, maybe they will make better decisions? Clearly, not true.
What about the wisdom that comes with age, all the compiled information?
Does it? You know an old person? You ever asked an old person the wrong question? Is that wisdom?
Wait, what would be the wrong question? Like asking your old sweet grandma about race problems.
Exactly. Hey, Grandma, what was the 1950s like?
Oh, sweetie, those were the good old days.
That was when water fountains were clean, goddammit, right? Yeah.
That's a
Yeah, right. Exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I do think part of it, too, is you can outstay your welcome on this planet, I think, a little bit. And that's how we're designed.
Euthanation of the mentally feeble.
No. That's not what I mean. I just mean don't give them reins to the country. Because I don't know that there's a prime window for human beings because everybody is different. And some people are terrible people for 30 years and then great people for 60 years, right? And some people over time become more and more jaded and more stuck in their ways. There is also something about, I would say, neuroplasticity is huge. Older people just do not have it the same way. So if they think a certain way, whether or not that is the way that things should be thought about in now, it doesn't matter because it's not going to change.
I have heard some funny examples of issues of social media problems being represented to Supreme Court and our court system in general in Congress. And there seems to be a lack of understanding of how these systems work. Social media,
Amy Coney Barrett didn't know about the right to assemble. When she was being brought into the Supreme Court, she couldn't name the right to assemble. Isn't that fucking wild? Supreme Court.
One of the judges?
Yes, that's one of Trump's judges. Super fascist. Yeah.
Fashy.
Yeah. The right to assemble. That's Bill of Rights shit. If your job is to interpret the Constitution, you should know the Bill of Rights.
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty fundamental thing to understand.
It's literally, I think it's right number one. It's right to assemble, free speech, right? I mean, that's one. Number one is the first thing we were granted.
Okay, what do you think are some of, on a more positive note, one of the best things going on at the moment in America?
Our generation. We are, to a large degree, not all of us, but to a large degree, we are a lot more informed. We're a lot more social about finding out what the hell is going on. I think we are a lot more forward-thinking, and I think that's necessary. Youth necessitates it.
When you say forward-thinking, you mean thinking towards the future?
Of course. We have more future. That makes more sense, right? I mean, it makes more sense that we would be like, what's it going to be 50 years from now? Because we'll probably be here.
Oh, and then you get into the question of life being extended and things along those lines. Would you ever want to go into cryosleep? Side tangent for a second. Would you ever want to live for a very long time, like hundreds or thousands of years?
No. I think 60, 70 is probably going to do it for me.
Yeah. Come on, man. What about the stars?
The way I treat my body, are you kidding?
What if, okay, yeah, that is always the question, right? What if you were competent, though, at like 60 or 70? You could essentially maintain the power of youth.
Well, I'm not worried about competency. I got, I think I hope I'll be all there, It's a matter of quality of life, I think.
Yeah.
Not to say people who are 60 and 70 and treated their bodies poorly don't have a quality of life. I'm just saying...
For you personally?
I have thrown myself into a mosh pit. I have done some drugs. I have, really pushed the limit. It's a miracle I'm as healthy as I am now, right? And I'm 23 years old, right?
Oh, that fucking makes me curious. What's been one of the most profound teaching moments or learning experiences in your life?
I think one of the most profound teaching experiences.
And by that, I mean, like, life was teaching you something.
So for me, a lot of the lessons that I've learned, it wasn't one moment. It was like 17 moments. I'm somebody who has to make a mistake a few times before I really get it through my head, right?
I feel that.
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that, to a large degree, people are who they surround themselves with. And who you choose to spend your time with and who you choose to listen to is huge. because people are inherently very, very, very social, and worldview comes in a big part based on what you're hearing and what you are seeing. And if you go around people who are not, you should always be around people you can learn something from. Even if it's, you got a lot of things you couldn't learn something from, you always got to have something that you are making yourself better by, I think, is huge. And the more you can find that, the better. Something I would say that is different about my life now than was a year ago, 2 years ago, is I am surrounded by people who I want to be like more than anything else. And that is huge. And that took a lot of time to figure out how to do that. And I'm still, it's always a work in progress. And you're always going to have one person who gets in and messes everything up for a second, and then you got to readjust, and that's life, I think. I think the trick is to keep it to one or two people at a time, right?
Not have the majority of the group be...
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, but there's definitely was, and I think part of that is I was getting involved with music and drugs and finding out myself a lot because I was very sheltered growing up. And so when I went to college, when I was 17, 18, I was like, I'm going to do all of the things, all of the time. Yeah. I mean, I was high for like 3 years, right? I mean, yeah right. So you've got to be careful when you get into stuff like that. There are people who do those things that have a good head on their shoulders as far as to the amount that I was doing them. Because in order to do things like that, you have to be surrounded by people who are doing things like that. You can't be high out of your mind and be around sober people because sober people are going to be like, what the hell is this guy doing, right? I would say, and I've said this to people who are asking me advice about substances and drugs and things like that. The more dangerous thing about drugs, yes, there's a danger to it. The most dangerous thing is the people that do them. If you surround yourself with people who are doing those sorts of things all of the time, chances are not everybody's doing them for the right reasons. And you're likely to get pulled into that.
What would be the wrong reasons to do drugs?
There's, I don't want to say escapism because there's certainly a level of escapism that is okay. It's again with the hedonism and stepping on people's toes thing. It's when escapism becomes the only thing. And when escape at all costs. And escaping what? And it only also helps if you understand where you are in a social space and where you are in your own mind. And if you have a good grasp of your mental health, I think you are a lot more likely to go through those things and be okay. But if you are not grounded, if you are suffering mentally and you take a bunch of acid, it's not going to fix anything. You may come away with a different worldview. And that's what happened for me is I kind of got it piecemeal, where I was very misguided in a lot of ways. But doing some things helped me get a new perspective, which they can help do that. But I don't know how much I would attribute it to those things, but they were around. Does that make sense?
I don't know how much I would attribute to those things, but they were around.
So I wouldn't say that the substances changed my mind, but they definitely were around when my mind was changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you're not sure if they played the causal role, but...
I would doubt that they played the causal role. There were some moments with hallucinogenics specifically where they may have been a catalyst. Because the whole thing with hallucinogens, and it matters what you're taking and your dosage. You should not... I won't say you shouldn't go balls deep in it. Once or twice to get a feel for what's too much, I think is fair
and definitely
for
be
anybody.
around the right people when you do that.
Exactly. And don't be around nobody at all. I've made that mistake, and that was not good. Yeah.
Especially when you're testing how much you can do.
Yeah, let me tell you, 5 tabs by myself in my room that is, from these trees, like out into the camera, like that. Yeah, being in that for... I was staggering it too. So this was like a 16-hour high. Yeah, that was not. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm a bit familiar.
Yeah.
But not with that specific. But I'm familiar with the realm of LSD.
Right.
I've peaked out, I think, 4 tabs. And I was not in a room by myself. What was that like?
I spoke to God. It was very. it happened a couple of times, so that's first of all. And I think it matters the headspace you're going into it too.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So that played a big part in it. There were definitely large parts of all of those trips that were no bueno, not good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's to some degree when you're doing stuff like that, you have to accept that's a risk. And at some point, if you take hallucinogens, at some point you are going to have a bad experience. Period. Just like if you do anything for a certain amount of time, you're going to have a bad experience. You know, if you drink, there's a good way to drink. There's a way to have fun and be social and use it as kind of a, social lubricant. But there's also a way to be the guy who gets blackout drunk and says dumb shit at a party.
Yeah. For sure. Man, now thinking of escapism, addiction, trauma, using drugs to self-medicate.
That's huge. Okay. So let me actually touch on that a little bit. A huge part of the problem that I had with substances, which led me down not quite an addiction hole, but I was riding that line for a long time. I was using it as self-medication to deal with trauma that I had not self-reflected on and dealt with and forgiven myself for is a big part of it. Because drugs can be numbing. Some of them, probably not hallucinogens. I wouldn't say numbing would be the word there. But I would say that there's a certain aspect to which escapism is good if you understand why you're doing it. But if you're like, I need to do this right now.
And what you said was really important. Like at the cost of anything, I can't feel this. I can't be in this. I gotta get away.
Exactly. As a crutch if you're doing substances as a crutch, that is a red flag. Big time.
Which really makes me wonder. It seemed in a lot of addictive cases where you're using it for and I'll say I'm defining addiction as you have a pain, you have a trauma, and you want to relieve yourself of some discomfort in some way, or you feel a strong urge to take this substance. And the substance, it's a relief from the pain, or at a certain point you just feel this strong urge. So, you know what, I'll stick with relief. There's a relief, there's a little bit of reprieve when you use the thing, and then there's a craving to do it again. And in the very nature of addiction, you kind of want to stop. You can see it's not good, but if you can't figure out how, it's very difficult to stop.
I'll add something to that too. There can definitely be a temporary reprieve with substances if you are going through something. That's definitely true.
Yes.
Most often, you come out the other side and you are in a deeper hole than you were when you started.
That feeling in your gut of like, ugh. Why the fuck did I do that?
And then if the only way you've learned how to cope is to use...
I think I'll just use a little more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll just level out. I'll be fine. I'm not going to go crazy like I did yesterday, but let me take, 2 benzos as opposed to the 5 I took yesterday, right? Which is... Opioids are dangerous. Do not do opioids.
Yeah. And then it makes me wonder if very often I'm guessing people thought that was the best option they had. And then it makes me wonder, why don't people have a better option? Because I've noticed addiction being a very widespread phenomenon, whether it's through food, whether it's through drugs, whether it's through porn, whether it's through shopping, it could be literally anything. It seems to be the relationship you have. Like you said earlier, it's not the drug, it's the person who's using them or how they're using it. And so it makes me wonder, what are we lacking when it comes to coping with pain, suffering, etc., in a healthy way?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that. Can you rephrase and maybe I can...
What have you found as a better alternative? Okay, 2 things. Why did you stop using in a way that you describe as too hedonistic?
Sure.
And what are you doing now? Like, how do you enjoy life now if you're not doing that,
First of all, I would say for me, and this isn't how it works for everybody, I was able to become very litigious with it. I'm very strict about my usage. Alcohol I'm a little looser on because I don't want to be out and counting my beers, But with other things, I am much more conscious of how I'm doing it and what I'm doing it and treating it like it's a medicine I got to take. Maybe I got to take isn't the right language, but it's as in it is a medicine that is helping. specific with the dosage, specific about timing, things like that. Knowing where I'm going to be, who I'm going to be around, if anybody, what I'm doing with it, because sometimes you can do a thing that you're cool on, and then 2 beers in, and you are not cool anymore.
Mm-hmm. So what made it click? Was it just because for me, I was in a hole of too much video games and smoking weed, and that was just life. And there was a point where it was fine. It was fun and dandy. It was a wonderful thing. And it started to slowly create this little like void in my stomach that got a little bigger and bigger. And I would feel this deep yearning to get the fuck out when I was with my friends and we're smoking and playing video games. There was this pain that was kind of screaming at me like, this isn't the thing to be doing. This isn't the right thing to be doing. And for me, the reason why I stopped doing it as much was simply that pain. I just was like, oh, I gotta fucking find some other thing. And it's interesting that you said you came here to leave Maryland and the stuff you had going on there, because I had an equivalent thing that happened in my life. I left and I went to Puerto Rico for a while, and maybe sometimes escapism is good because it seemed like I was escaping that to maybe get a different perspective. I was detaching from that world because I felt like I couldn't control myself when I was in it. When I had those triggers that are all around me constantly trying to pull me in, I didn't feel like I was strong enough to say no and to be disciplined enough. And so it seemed sometimes it was better to just detach completely and then come back to it a different person.
I think that's a little different because there's a difference between taking a substance and changing your environment. When you're around triggers like that, and I'm speaking for personal experience now, when you're around triggers like that, you can be aware that there are triggers there. You can be aware that they're all around you until you take a real step back and be for a while without them. You can't recognize all of them, and you can't recognize what they actually look like and what they actually want to do some of the time.
The utility of detachment.
There is a utility in getting away and finding you. A lot of people say that. I think I think finding yourself is huge.
Yeah. Figuring out what the fuck you actually want in life. How to not live a life you regret. Mm-hmm. What would you consider some of the... maybe I'm sticking too much to heavy topics and...
Go for it. Come on. All
right.
Lay it on me.
What would you consider some of the highest virtues for yourself?
Self-awareness is good, but there is a point where self-awareness becomes a little too much. You can overanalyze, and that becomes its own addiction and rabbit hole, and that's something that I work actively to not do anymore. Mm-hmm. I think self-respect is huge.
Define respect.
You have to... There's a certain amount to which, in order to put food on the table, you got to waste your time a little bit.
When we say waste, do you just mean working?
Yeah, right.
The grind.
Yeah, right. Do things that you wouldn't really want to spend your time doing, but you got to do stuff. That's the world we live in, and that's unfortunate. And to a certain degree, you have to know where that line is. I think self-respect is huge. You have to love yourself is big, and that took me a very long time. I'm only just now really getting into figuring myself out because for so long I was the only person I wanted to get away from for a very long time, right?
Damn, that's deep. Mm-hmm. To not want to look yourself in the face. Have you ever heard the concept of the shadow in psychology?
Yeah, that's Carl Jung, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To stare your shadow in the face. The parts of yourself you don't want to admit are true. Man, that's a useful fucking thing to do. It hurts to a degree, but it's so useful.
Well, and there's utility in the shadow. There's
oh my God,
real
yeah.
utility in the shadow.
Yeah.
Art is an excellent example of that. I listen to, I'm a pretty, at this point in my life, I'm more optimistic than I've been. I wouldn't call myself optimistic, but I'm more optimistic than I've been in my life now. But, if you listen to the music I listen to, you wouldn't think so because, Motorhead and, yeah, right, exactly.
The rage.
Exactly. Which is why I'm always, something that's big for me is like, and this has always been true for me, but it's even more true now is like when I'm out and at a show or something, being present is everything. And that it's something, even now at parties, the biggest thing for me, or out socially, even in a small social gathering, the biggest thing for me is consciously and actively getting away from the overanalysis and the self-deprecation, and being present is huge.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're giving me a memory of, so I'm walking down this mountain we climbed up like halfway with some friends, and we realized we did not have nearly enough water. So we're burnt out, we're out of water, we're gassed out, and we're walking down the mountain. And I'm trying to realize, like, okay, I'm going to look at this as the challenge to how can I thrive even though I'm deeply uncomfortable. And eventually the best method I found was to put all my focus into the one step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And I'm not thinking about what's around that corner. Maybe the parking lot's going to be around that corner, because that was so painful, or I'm not thinking about my pain or trying to distract myself. Being fully absorbed in one moment, next moment, next moment, next moment. It made it kind of enjoyable.
Something that I have found about being productive and being true to oneself. When you want to get something done, the big task can be very, very, very daunting. Let me actually talk about the demos that I'm making now, because I've just started my lifelong wrestle with Reaper. Is basically what I've done, which is a DAW. That's just a music editing station. Pro Tools.
Oh, yeah.
Choose your weapon, right? I have found what kept me from doing that for so long was, I gotta go and sit down and do the studio thing and do the whole song. That's how I saw it. Now it's, let me see if I can't get 10 seconds of this song down.
Yeah.
And I'll just do this now. It'll take 20 minutes to get the right take, and then I'll move on, and something will get done. And if you do things piecemeal like that, and you don't over-apply yourself, you should apply yourself. You should sit in a room and do the thing for several hours. But it's not several hours straight through. It should be, 20 minutes and then 10 off, and then 20 and then 10 off.
And a lot of that seems to come back to the self-respect you're talking about. Like, when you start to know yourself, you start to understand what my limits are. How long am I actually willing to sit in this fucking chair and do work? And how many times am I willing to do that over the course of weeks, months, years? And then when you start to actually understand yourself, and you're not whipping yourself into action with this tyrannical ideal you have of what the good thing to do is, well, then you can start to actually get shit done. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Everything is little steps, I think. I would go even to something let me bring it to AI a little bit, because I think that us designing intelligence is a big key in us understanding ourselves a little bit, I think.
Lex Fridman, ? Do you know who...
I don't. One moment.
Yeah.
And then we'll... Yes. So with artificial intelligence, what we have found is... And I'm not making artificial intelligence. I'm big we, not me. And if you teach an AI a large task, it's going to do that task inefficiently and wrong a lot of the time. However, if you teach it to break it down into the tiniest minuscule tasks possible, and then learn all of those individually, and then bring them together as one group, that it gets things done a lot better.
So are you teaching multiple AIs tiny tasks?
I mean, we will.
Or, are you teaching one AI, one small task at a time?
Exactly.
And then figure out how to work out those bugs, then another small task, and somehow you're doing that all with the same AI?
Exactly.
Interesting.
You have it learn one tiny thing. If you're having an AI, let's say, make a notebook or something, you're teaching it how to, first things first is you teach it how to make the spiral, and then you're like, okay, this is how many pages go in it, and these are where the lines go, and each of those are individual things, as opposed to make this. Right.
Man, it's kind of ridiculous how difficult it is, from what I've heard, to teach an AI to do something as simple as walk around a classroom. To be able to tell where the desks are, where I should put my foot. And apparently we've been on the verge of figuring that out for decades on end, but it's just such a unimaginably difficult task that it's taking way longer than we thought. Have you heard of the singularity?
I want you to define it, because I want to hear the language we're using here.
Okay. Singularity being if we reach a certain point of development in a list of given technologies, then any one of those technologies, if we develop it to a certain point, will speed up at an unimaginable rate the development of all these other technologies that would have sped up all the other ones. Okay, I'm saying that very mixed up. Let's try and say that in a more understandable way. Let's say we develop AI to a certain degree.
Self-teaching AI.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Let's say we get a self-teaching AI, or we understand the human mind enough so we can speed up our processing speed and our storage spaces in our brain. Or yes, please. Coffee. Wink, wink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For those of you who are only listening, we are drinking
non-brand.
Non-brand.
Yeah, there's no label on this, and it's not a brand, and I am not loyal to any company, whether it has an eagle as its logo or not.
Mm-hmm. He made alcohol in his toilet, and we're drinking it out of 7-Eleven
Extra
cups.
Flavor, baby.
Yeah. 7-Eleven coffee cups. Incognito.
Mm-hmm.
How neato. Or a nanotechnology, etc. We'll get it to a certain point where within the course of a month, we have created thousands, as it was described to me, of Nobel Prize winning, world-changing developments. And if we just reach a certain point of development in any of these given technologies, it will machine gun rapid fire speed up the development of all these other groundbreaking, world-changing technologies.
Technology is exponential, and it only becomes more exponential as we move forward.
The singularity. Like, imagine going to a coma for a month and you wake up and now people, I don't know, are flying around. I couldn't even conceptualize what it would look like. Imagine
flying around would be gravitational manipulation, which I think is the next big step. When we can eliminate propulsion, that changes everything.
Gravitational manipulation.
Well, that's what they're doing. Haven't you seen them? They're here.
Have you seen the fucking Tic Tac?
Yeah, they're here, dude.
What a thing to...
Which is bad news for us, dude.
So far, we're good. So far, they haven't been aggressive.
Well, okay, but do you know why that's bad news? Okay, so are you familiar with the Great Filter?
I have heard the concept.
Yeah, so basically the Great Filter is the idea that the reason we don't see aliens is because there is a filter or several that life has to pass through that we either haven't passed through or have passed through. That's more difficult. Basically, extinction level events are...
That whenever a civilization gets to our level of power, they tend to go extinct by self-destruction.
Exactly.
And that is the Great Filter. Man, that's one of those ideas that I don't even want to toy with too much because I'm afraid of the self-fulfilling prophecy thing again. Like, I've heard a lot of those concepts being very popular in the realm of technological development. And maybe this is naive, and I really want to become more of a practical realist instead of a cynicist, or if that's even a word, or optimist. What do you think? What does the best future for humanity look like to you?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
What do you think are our realistic, positive potentials within the next few years or decades? Like, do you think a Star Trek reality is possible?
Well, they have both propulsion and gravitational manipulation in Star Trek, so I'm going to go with no. But I don't think it'll be like that. Here's what I think. First of all, to go back to the Great Filter thing that I was saying. So the existence of aliens, first of all, and I don't have the words to explain this, so you have to find somebody else to explain it. But basically, the existence of aliens that we can see essentially greatens the chances that the Great Filter is ahead of us as opposed to behind us. And if you were to ask me why, I would be like, somebody smarter than me said it. So,
Great Filter being ahead of us.
Which is...
What does that mean?
Well, okay, so I can go for... There are two paths I could go down here. I could talk about what it probably means abstractly, and I have a lot of opinions about this particular topic. So what I think it might mean.
Okay.
So I think inarguably, the great filter is probably tied to technology in some way or another. I think that's probably the objective truth. Probably, I think. I think we're probably coming pretty close to it. If they're letting us know that they're here, I think that probably is nothing.
Okay, so wait. I think I misunderstood the great filter as we were describing earlier. I imagined it as we don't see aliens in space because whenever a civilization reaches the technological level of being able to create colonies in space, they end up destroying themselves. That's what I imagined the great filter.
Usually. So the great filter is a difficult barrier to pass, theoretically not an impossible one.
Mm-hmm.
It's why the sky is not filled with aliens as opposed to there are none. Because I believe, allegedly, there are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe so.
If I had to place a bet in either boat, I'd probably say, I believe aliens exist. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Neil deGrasse Tyson made the best analogy for this, or metaphor. I always confuse those two. But he took a cup of water and he scooped it out of the ocean and said, all right, this is how much of space we can see and have analyzed. I don't see a whale in this cup. Just because I don't see a whale in this cup doesn't mean in the vastness of the ocean there aren't many whales and many other types of life swimming around, right? And so to say just from what we can see right now, well, we don't see aliens right now, to say that means no aliens exist is kind of a silly proposition.
It's ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same with the God argument, you know? Oh, I don't see him, so where is he?
Yeah.
It's bullshit. Human arrogance is a lot of what that is, I think.
Yeah. Because my infinitely understanding sensory experience can't see this okay, clearly you don't understand.
Or the infinitely more arrogant, I see God everywhere.
Why is that more arrogant? What if they truly do? What if they've opened their third eye and they've achieved the level?
None of them have. Have you met some of these people? No way. Absolutely not.
Dude, that's a funny thing. What if we've met God incarnate, but it just took a form we totally didn't expect, so we just didn't see it while it was right in front of us. And it was one of the evangelists talking about.
We're touching on a bunch of things I have a load of opinions about.
Yes.
I think God's probably the absence.
Absent, what does that mean?
Saying God exists, I think, is probably is an oxymoron. I think probably God is what does not exist.
So you think nothingness is God?
Exactly. The void, death, the end, however you want to put it.
The void. It struck me a little bit ago that we don't really understand or at least I don't, really understand what nothingness is. It's one of those impossible to conceptualize. Yeah.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Dude, it's weird how we're surrounded by these incredible mysteries of what is the tic-tac? Where did it come from? What is nothingness? What is death? What is life? What is the meaning of it all? And yet we're not paralyzed by this infinite amount of misunderstood or not at all understood things. And we still get by, we still put our shoes on and go for walks and feel like it's important to get food in our system and make relationships with people. Mm-hmm. It's so strange to pair those two. Have you ever seen a something cosmically fantastical you couldn't really explain and then just kind of went about your day because there was no real way you could investigate it?
No. I think the closest that I have come probably okay, so I'll get into what I think about it in a second. But what has happened to me sometimes. Have you seen Paranormal Activity? Okay, so in the first Paranormal Activity, there's a scene. First of all, this movie has the most obvious demon in the world. It's clearly there's a demon in your house. Get the fuck out, right? But there's a scene in Paranormal Activity where they call a demonologist or some guy who's supposed to go and make the things go away. And he walks into the house and immediately is like, even me being here is making it worse and I need to leave right now. I've had that feeling in a couple of places. I think places can have very distinct vibes. Vibe check your spaces. I think I think the reason I think that is that I don't think time functions the way we think it does. I don't think it is as linear as we experience it. I think that's a necessity to how life works, but I don't think that time as an objective truth is linear. I think it's probably a little less open-ended. And I think that things that happened or will happen, maybe, if we're talking about time like this, right? I think they can leave something on a place. And I think that there are things that we don't understand about ourselves and about, I think a lot of people call this concept the soul. A lot of people call it ghosts. A lot of people call it, I think there are things about, maybe it can be defined by physics, but maybe it can't, that are extracurricular in how we exist in this.
Hold up. I was following up to the point of extracurricular.
Maybe that's not the right word. Extra sensory, perhaps. Outside of our understanding of bonus points. It's extra things that are around us that we can't understand.
The Easter eggs of reality.
Exactly.
Oh my God, dude. You ever hear of Sadhguru?
Yeah, I have heard of Sadhguru.
Okay, so he was having incredibly high temperature and he was feeling horrible. He was going to doctors. They couldn't really figure out. They were giving him this drug, testing this, that, and the other thing. He was going to some of the best doctors in the world, and they were analyzing him. And they said, we're not really sure what's wrong, but we think we need to go in for this invasive surgery. And this was happening over the course of like a month. He constantly had a fever of some ridiculous 100+ degree. And he reached the point before the surgery, he's like, no, I'm not going in for surgery. I'm going to solve this kind of my own way. And he went to this point in America. I forget, it might be the Devil's Tower. There's some very mythical, there's a lot of lore around this place. And he said he went there and he
Places do have lore, don't they?
Yeah, and he said he did a specific sort of meditation. And now I have to pause to give the context. He said certain yogis throughout history, when you talk about extrasensory experience, they have come to understand and control a part of our senses or of reality so that they could place a thing in a place, as fucking vague as that is, they could place something somewhere that you can't see or sense unless you have access to this specific sort of sense, which apparently takes some strange sort of training to gain access to, which I don't quite understand. But in short, he said that yogis have left that thing in this place in America, and he was going to go there and tap into that thing, whatever that is. And so he goes there, he does his meditation for a few hours, and he comes back out and he feels better. And doctors are left confounded.
Well, and now it's my turn to play devil's advocate here. To what degree would that maybe be placebo?
Placebo, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I've thought about that, right? That would be my attempt to rationalize, but I wonder, have you ever watched an anime where...
No.
Never.
I saw some of Death Note. That's about what we got here.
All right.
Anime knowledge.
There's a common theme in animes and probably other stories too, where a character can do something so fantastical that when people that aren't a part of their world watch, like in Dragon Ball Z, when they're flying around or shooting beams out of the world, every now and then the normal people will observe and they'll come up with all these ridiculous explanations, like, oh, he's hiding. Oh, not even that ridiculous. They kind of make sense based on what your current knowledge structure is. He's hiding jetpacks on him in some way. He's shooting missiles out of his hand with some advanced contraption that we don't understand. But and all that kind of makes sense. Like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And when I look at the Sadhguru thing, like, oh yeah, placebo. Maybe he's tapped into some incredible power of that, because that can be pretty incredible. Or maybe he really did tap into some thing we can't sense that can be left for hundreds of years in a place, some sort of energy.
Sure.
Strange.
And I do believe, and I would be skeptical of the Sadhguru's story just because I don't know this man. You know?
Fair enough.
But I am definitively of the belief that there are things left places that we can't understand. And maybe left is the wrong word because it suggests past tense. But I do think that there are... I'm sure it's happened to you where you've walked in a room and you're like, this is fucking terrible and I need to get out of here immediately. I'm sure it's happened.
I can't think of specifics off the top of my head, but I have heard of people going into, for example, places where people were tortured, like soldiers clearing Saddam Hussein, some of his torture rooms, and there was no people left there. Even the blood might have been cleaned up, but you walk in there and they said they could just sense that there's a great darkness to this room.
So my anecdotal story here is my mother...
Oh, by the way, do you have an alarm set for when you need to...
my hard out is gone, so we're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, anecdotal. My mother lived in a building in Baltimore that's an old building. And they say that the top floor was the servant quarters. I think it was probably the slave barracks. I could not go up there. It was like I would go up there and I would just get this feeling. And before she even told me what had gone on up there, it was... I've never experienced anything so intense as far as a place and a vibe in my life. It was... And I am somebody who is not hocus pocusy. I don't believe, if somebody goes ghost, the first thing I go is, all right, maybe it's placebo, right?
Yeah, maybe you have some schizophrenia that you need to get figured out.
Exactly. This place, I would not spend 5 minutes there. It is, there is some evil there.
I had a girlfriend, an ex, and she said she could see spirits, she could see ghosts, and every now and then she was able to predict when someone was going to die. Like she would get this sense, this understanding that X person's going to pass away soon. And that it's come true, according to her, every time she's had this feeling and the sense that within the next few weeks or so, the person passes away. She's also said she's seen spirits, and I asked her, well, have you ever thought it was schizophrenia or something along these lines? Have you gotten tested for it? And she said when she was a kid, her parents hooked up these, I'll call them neural monitors, although I don't know if that's the right word for them. The thing you'll see if someone's getting their brain scanned, hooked up to their head. And they had this hooked up to her for several months at a time just to kind of see what was going on. And they said the parts that light up in schizophrenics did not light up, but the parts that, the things that happen when someone dies are the things that were happening in her brain when she said she was having seeing a spirit or having one of her premonitions. And so...
She was entering the spirit realm, dude.
Yeah. That just leaves a big fucking question mark, because I always used to think, people just hallucinating or being schizophrenic, and...
There's certainly some of that going on in this world.
Right?
So it's very hard to find the line.
That makes me wonder, if you listen to 1,000 ghost stories, what if 999 of them are just people hearing weird drafts in their house, but then one of them is actually real. One of them, something's going on, and because 999, you just dismiss all the other ones.
Well, the show Ghost Adventures? Okay, well, it's a show where they hunt ghosts. You know how many ghosts they found? Zero. Yeah, right, exactly. So it makes you wonder. I don't know. I also think, so you said this person was a woman, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know what this means. I'm not saying anything. Everybody who I have ever met that has felt some sort of psychic energy, and there have been some people, and there are some people who are bullshitting. I think there were maybe some people who might not have been bullshitting and maybe had the wrong labels for it, who were able to tell me, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this, before something like that happened. Mm-hmm. Almost exclusively, not entirely exclusively, but
mostly
almost
women?
Exclusively, but they've been women.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I wonder if there's not some sort of emotional intelligence that goes into this sort of thing. I think women tend to be more emotionally intelligent, and I think that I wonder if that doesn't play a role in the fact that disproportionately these kind of stories that I've heard, and this is anecdotal, comes from women.
How do you define emotional intelligence?
Ability to read a room.
Ability to read a room. Ability to interpret what the emotions are saying.
Intuitively. It's almost like a muscle reflex for people who are really emotionally intelligent. You don't even notice that you're doing it. You just are like, that person had a bad vibe, or this person was clearly experiencing this or this or this.
It's like your
feelings. I was in the room
are...
with that person for 3 hours and I didn't feel that at all. And then you talk to that person and they're like, yeah, I was going through a hard time. What?
There's a U.S.A fighter, Rose Namajunas, and she's had several times in her life. One example would be she's in a club, hanging out with her friends, having a great time, and she has this feeling like we need to go, like now. Like we need to go like now. And like, okay, at this point we've come to trust her intuition so much because of past stories. We're okay, we get up and we go immediately. And when they're in their car in the parking lot, they hear shots being fired within the club.
I've actually heard this story before.
Yeah.
And I've heard a couple of stories like it, and it's crazy. So my takeaway from that is when you are with a group and you go somewhere and somebody, especially a woman, tells you we need to fucking leave right now.
Fucking leave.
Get the fuck out. Period. Don't fuck with that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she says she can sense a vibe that changes in the room. And I can imagine, I don't know, maybe things get a little more quietly. Maybe you see but don't consciously understand through thought. You can't articulate exactly why, but there's a part of you that picked up on someone's maybe twitching. They're kind of looking around.
Well, and it could be subconscious things too, because we perceive a lot of things that we don't consciously understand, which definitely can be true. And maybe there's even something where women are even better at that. Maybe there's something to that too. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just a sexist. Maybe. Right.
Sexist against men, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, no wonder, right?
That's funny.
All right.
Yeah. Superpowers.
Yeah. Let's touch on aliens a bit more, shall we?
We shall.
Yeah, because now I want to talk about that because you've got me on. Yeah, you've gone to a dangerous place with me because I love talking about this shit. Yeah, I wonder to. Okay, so actually, let me talk about. You talked about the future of what humans might do. I have a very specific opinion about the great filter we touched on. I wonder, there are two technologies that exist now, but if we're comparing them to the telephone, they're the telegram, right? We're early, and these two technologies that are going to exponentially get better are artificial intelligence and CRISPR. CRISPR is genetic editing, editing the DNA strand based on, I think it's a certain protein, maybe it's called an enzyme. I don't know the science words, but we can edit DNA now.
Give your babies purple eyes.
Yeah, right.
So get rid of diabetes.
I think that starts at a Gattaca place. I think that starts at that's a movie where people gene edit and people who aren't gene edited are, left out of society, whatever. It's a ham-handed comparison and it's not a very good movie. But the point is that I think it starts with little things, little designer baby things. And we're not far from that. We're probably about 20 years out from that, maybe. So that's starting, But it'll be like hair plugs in the 90s. It's going to look like somebody stuck Velcro to the top of your head for a little while and then,
Eventually it just becomes natural looking hair.
Exactly. The hair plugs look better than real hair now. Right. Yeah. I think that there's a point where artificial intelligence is able to manipulate the DNA strand so much that DNA doesn't become the restriction by which life is made, but actually it becomes clay. It becomes the building block by which we can manipulate the entirety of the genome, the entirety of how things are made.
Man, that's going to be so fucking weird because the potential, if it really becomes as moldable as clay, first off, there's going to be a lot of fucking around, and
we're going to fuck this planet up real good. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
We're already releasing gene-edited animals into the wild. That's already happening to edit food chains. That's already happening. It's happening right now. It's happening in the United States.
Is it being done successfully, or is it like the equivalent of bringing snakes in to kill rabbits and then the snakes end up overpopulating? And
I think we are just barely one crooked ladder rung above that, but we're moving forward. there's also a point where it becomes, what do we make human beings? Because, so here's what I think about, you asked about the future of humans as well, and so I'm tying a bunch of things back. I don't know that human beings as we know them now have all that much of a future, because I think very soon, within the next, I would put on the outside 200 years, I think it's probably sooner than that, where the game completely changes.
Where maybe you can't even call us humans anymore. We're a different species.
Exactly. Where we're not, you know, we were, whatever was behind Homo sapiens, you know, it's not Neanderthal, but it's like, we're not that anymore. We are now a completely different thing. And I think that also gets exponential with time. I think we create beings that are alive that are very good for war. I think that's probably what comes first. I think we create super intelligence very quickly. And also, this is a little bit, let me put on my tinfoil hat a little bit here. I wonder if that's not why the very popular image of an alien, you know what I mean, with the big head and the big eyes. I wonder if there's not some string of truth to that, because they're able to edit their own minds. Because that comes before gravitational manipulation. So before starship travel, we are able to edit ourselves.
Why do you think that comes before?
Because in order to be smart enough to create that sort of gravitational manipulation technology, what we'll really have to do is reverse engineer it, because we probably already have the spacecrafts. Again, tinfoil hat. I think.
Well, if you're looking at the Tic Tac, bro, the things that I was able to do.
If they're telling us that they exist, they know a lot more than we do.
Or what if the Tic Tac's just a BS story to be? I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on now. What if it? Because it was released during Trump's presidency. What if it was just used as a distraction?
I think exactly the opposite thing. I think because so much was going on, they felt comfortable releasing it, because so much was going on that nobody was going to pay fucking attention to it.
You just kind of get dust under the rug.
Exactly. And who has?
Yeah. And it's
people
one of those
that are
things
interested in aliens, like you and I, but if you tell most people, and I've told a lot of people, that the Pentagon has confirmed that UFOs exist.
Like, nah, you're crazy. Like, what have you not heard of?
In 2022, most people are still like, no way, that's true.
That is kind of funny how many people don't understand that story. And it's weird, because it's like, what are you going to do about that now that you know about it? Because it moved so quickly, we can't grab or investigate it in any way. All you can do is investigate the sources.
No propulsion, baby. Yeah, right.
Just moving like I've heard it described as the mouse on a screen. If you can just fling the cursor around really quickly in all different sorts of directions, there's no lag to
mouse,
it.
Because it'll practically fucking teleport.
Yeah. What do you think about VR? Living in a virtual reality? Because that's going to be strange to pair with gene editing.
Very quickly, I think we're a lot closer to VR becoming dystopian than we are to...
Oh, why do you think dystopian? What about wonderful
look around you.
worlds?
Yeah, why do I think dystopian? When we're changing the atmosphere and killing each other in large numbers, and why would I think that?
Come on, looks like a beautiful day. The air breathes.
I think very quickly you get into Inception territory. Inception, the main bad guy, not quite bad guy, but is the person played by, she was Talia al Ghul in Dark Knight Rises. I forget her name. She's got some French name. And Leonardo DiCaprio. But essentially, the plot of Inception boils down to, apart from the dream jumping or whatever, which is important, but the woman who is essentially the main antagonist is convinced that reality is not real. And that's why she kills herself. Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's gotten into some weird territory. I was practicing lucid dreaming.
Oh, good for you, dude.
Real quick. Oh, but it got freaky because I stopped practicing it largely because I was hitting an equivalent barrier to what she hit. One of the times I was able to control it a little bit. I couldn't tell if I was in reality or a dream. I was fortunately dreaming, and I had the brilliant idea of, let me jump off of something really tall, because if I'm dreaming, I'll be fine. And I did, and I was fine. But then I was freaked out because I was like, wait, what if I start to be in reality and I can't tell if it's a dream or not, and I do something as crazy as that, but then I'm like, oh, this was real.
Public service announcement. Hello, children. Somebody who's taking a lot of acid speaking here. If you're going to take off, if you're going to fly, try to take off from the ground first.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a great public service announcement, kiddies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But VR. You ever see Ready Player One?
I have not.
Oh, it's a great movie. It's mostly because I just love geeking out about the wonderful potentials of being in a fucking virtual reality. But the world they represented is the real, quote unquote, real world was very dystopian. There was a lot of problems going on. A lot of people were, like we were talking about escapism earlier, escaping that world and living in the virtual world for the majority of their lives. And a very interesting thing happened at the end. Spoiler alert. Do you care if I spoil something?
Nope.
Okay, the main character ends up getting control over the virtual world. There's a great fight for control over this
That's
world.
when the Pac-Man scene happens, I imagine. I saw the trailers where they got the giant Pac-Man that comes down the street.
That's an Adam Sandler movie. That's not Ready Player One.
Is that not?
No, you're thinking of one of the. Oh no, it's an Adam Sandler movie. I can't remember the fucking name.
It was
of
made
it.
right around the same time, though. Wasn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
Roughly. But in short, the guy gets the magic Easter egg so he can control the world, which is a really cool plot. The creator of the world left this Easter egg when he died, and he said whoever can find it will end up, like, you can control the world and change it however you please. And he made 2 days of the week where he locks down the world, so no one in the world is able to go into this virtual world. So you're kind of forced to just look up
from
this
your
world.
phone.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That is a very interesting part of modern day. How often you'll walk down the street and see people with headphones on both ears so they don't hear what the fuck's going on around them. They're just looking down at their phone.
We're already detached, and you want to add worlds. Have you seen what Unreal Engine 5 looks like, dude?
Mm-mm.
We're already at, like, it's scary how good we are at this already.
I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited.
What are video games, 40, 45 years old, something like that? Maybe something like that?
Yeah,
Maybe
now that you mentioned
on the
it's
outside?
ridiculously new, and we're already
Right.
at... Have you ever played VR?
Yeah, I have. But we're at the telegram, as this is the telephone for VR. VR is going to become something completely different.
Yes, you could smell
And-
inside of it, feel inside of it.
What's I'm gonna Sword Art Online, I think, is the anime for your point of reference
For
there.
the weebs out there?
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen it because I am not a weeb, but I know that the premise is that it's all virtual reality stuff, and then there's some Inception. Is this real? Is this not real? Stuff that goes on, right?
I don't know about the Inception part, but the first part, yes. Maybe in the other seasons, some Inception shit starts going down. But essentially, a bunch of people who play the game get locked into the game by the creator because he has some sick,
Right.
twisted...
Okay, so there's another point I was going to make. We're going to be able to do VR or hack the brain in a way. We already have the technology to almost do this. We're about 10 years on the outside out from being able to have people do prison sentences in their mind or in VR, but do 1,000 years in a 5-minute period or something like that. And I'm being hyperbolic a little bit, but time dilation is huge.
Interesting. I haven't even thought about that or heard about that.
Yeah, they're already starting to try it.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not scary.
A little bit. But
to
also
what
very
degree does VR and the fact that you can kind of Inception VR, right? You can make people think that they're not in VR, or you can make them think they're in VR when they're not, right? Then we get into the question of consensual VRing. Because we don't live in a world where everybody's going to use that technology for good.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
For sure. It'll definitely come with a dark side. For me, I'm so in love with video games that I'm just so excited for it. I might be the crazy ape that just presses the button. Like, bring it. Come on.
Yeah, right.
But that is something to watch out for. Man, I had to literally sell my PlayStation because I couldn't stop playing it.
Yeah. I'm very consciously still rocking a PS3 because I know the moment I buy a PS4,
This game
2
or
months are
PS5,
gone.
God
Yeah.
forbid, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I owned a PS4 for about 2 months of my life, and I did not go outside during much of those 2 months. It was right when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, so that's part of that. But one of the greatest games ever, by the way, for sure, one of the greatest video games ever made.
And the slowness of it, there's very much a real life aspect to it in the long rides and needing to eat
you live
food.
as Arthur Morgan compared to what we think of as video games now, but in 20 years that statement's going to seem ridiculous. I mean, because the amount you'll be able to live as somebody in VR, especially if we're considering time dilation, it's fucking insane. You'll be able to live whole other lives. It'll be like Second Life from Rick and Morty, right?
Is that when? Yeah.
Yeah.
When you, the shop owner.
Yeah, exactly.
You got cancer and went back to owning the shop, Morty.
Second Life is not. Second Life is an actual video games, and that's not what it's called. It's called like Bob or something like that.
That's weird. Have you ever experienced time dilation in your own life? I only experienced it once. I was stick fighting with my friend, and I reached this point where we ended up going in like slow motion. I could see his arms and my own arm moving very slowly. And I've heard some martial artists say this is a phenomenon where you are taking so many frames per second that time seems to literally slow down. So have you ever experienced something like that?
I can't say something. I think time tends to be relative, but I don't think I've ever experienced something so profoundly dilated as
it was
that.
Crazy. So that really opened my mind to the potential of, okay, what you're talking about now makes sense. That 1,000 years in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, man.
Insane is what it is.
That's one of the most incredible parts about where humanity's at right now, that there's so many incredible technologies being developed at the moment.
And they're in their embryonic stages.
Yes.
What life is going to be like. Again, technology is like exponential. So what it's going to be like 20 years from now, and then what's going to be in development 20 years from now, so what it looks like in 40 years from now, it's going to be... should we survive ourselves for that long? It's going to be completely insane. Completely insane.
Yeah. There's so much wonderful potential to that. I've heard a lot of talk about our wisdom needs to get on par with our power level at the moment as humans.
That is where I'm concerned about all of these developments comes from, because I look around at humans and again, this goes back to the trust thing, and I'm on the other side of this line this time, but I don't have a hell of a lot of faith in people as a whole to do all of these steps right, because there's a lot that can go sideways in the next little bit, not to mention the future, going forward, period.
I don't believe we're going to get all the steps right.
Of course not.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I see some mistake as inevitable, but I have a belief that it's possible and worth aiming for to turn this into if not a utopia, a protopia, which is a concept I was only introduced to recently. Protopia is just the practical best version of the future that we could get, where utopia is a bit too dreamy from time to time.
Well, and protopia is a more active word too, which I think is better. I think that language is very good. Protopia, protopia reminds me proactive. Pro this, pro. You're actively working towards something, whereas utopia seems to be more passive. It's like it's heaven on earth. It's what it already exists, whereas protopia is a
movement towards
which is all life is a guiding yourself toward something.
I heard that was actually one of the biggest internal problems someone had to face when you were living in, for example, USSR, because they say we're already in a utopia, so any suffering you're having is like, no, you can't be suffering. We're already in utopia. And if you admit to it, you're what are you questioning our system? Are you saying our system's bad? Mm-hmm. So now you're a traitor or something along those lines. So you have to kind of lie to yourself that no, everything's great. Everything's great.
Right.
So yes, definitely a progress towards it. What do you trust? Being able to build trust. What have you found in your life are some keys for building trust with a person? Who are some of the people you trust?
You have to put the first foot forward.
Mm.
Most people are not willing to put themselves out on the line. So you have to put your balls on the line. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to be open. You have to be willing to take chances. You have to be willing to meet people you met once at a park nearby to do a podcast.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of I forget the specific. It's a thing to do with game theory, where they were putting a test.
Remind me what game theory is.
I will put it to you in the form of the example. Okay, so they are running these computer systems to see which is most effective over a long period of time. That's a really vague way of saying it, so I'll just ground it in an example to make it clear. The type of game that succeeded was, okay, I'm going to trust you. You're going to trust me. We're going to move forward. If one of us makes a mistake or cheats in some way, like I whack you, I punish you, but then we kind of get over it and move past. And it's not like you whack me, then I whack you, and then we just have this endless loop. There's a willingness to whack, then forgive, and keep moving along down the road. And there was there might be a strange adjustment to that of sometimes if someone makes a mistake, like an accidental whack happens, maybe you allow one whack to happen and you figure out, oh, was it accidental? Okay, we keep moving on. But if you do it twice, now I'm going to whack you. As opposed to some of the other game theories were, if you whack me, then I just whack you, then you whack me. Okay, I'm doing this terrible injustice. A description for this concept. But in short, testing and mathematically, it seems like best way for building trust is I extend myself to you. If you harm me, I don't just bend over and let you keep harming me. Like, I'm going to stand up for myself, but then we can kind of get over it, move on. And then it's...
I agree. I think the biggest part of that isn't even how you react when somebody... I mean, it can be, again, this goes back to the self-respect thing. If somebody fucks with you, you don't fuck with them. And I'm using those two terms. So fuck with in the first place is be rude, and fuck with in the second is be a part of. Right. I think to be a little clearer, I guess, I think the biggest part of that is extending yourself. You have to be willing to put yourself on the line a little bit. You have to be willing to take that risk and put trust in somebody that they don't necessarily deserve. People aren't always going to earn your trust that deserve your trust.
So how to not do that naively, to keep your wits about you, to understand that there's a malice potential in people, that we have a dark side.
Don't overextend.
Yeah.
I think that is the big way to do it smart, is don't overextend, but give them something little. Something, okay, well, let's see if I can trust you with this. You know?
I wonder if there's a way to work back the tension in America right now without having an explosive fever war-like pitch. Like, I wonder if there's a way to just kind of communicate, actually get to know each other. Because for me, it seems one of the biggest dangers right now is caricatures that people believe are reality. And by that, I mean a caricature we have of what the other side is or represents, and they have of us. But I never really...
The other side is an illusion. I think that's a big thing that people don't get. The other side is an illusion, for the most part. I think the biggest divide in people is those who have stolen the majority of the wealth from the rest of us, and then the rest of us. And people tend to forget that. And I think people also tend to forget that people who are ignorant are very often victims of their own ignorance, to a lesser degree, but certainly victims of their own ignorance. And I think that even saying that there's two sides isn't always constructive. Because anytime you put two sides to something, you are necessarily inviting othering. Because it's them or us, or it's that side or that side. And I think in most cases, and this encompasses a lot of things, and I think this is where our generation is sort of putting a foot forward, and we're just starting, but putting a foot forward is that I think in most ways, if you define human beings along a binary, you are going to be wrong.
Yeah. People are strange creatures.
And we're a lot more... even the dumb ones are a lot more complex than you give them credit for most of the time.
Yeah. The ability for someone to be full of contradictions yet still functional. And I think that's a large chunk of people. I've noticed a lot in the medium of conversation. There's a lot of overlooking that I have to do in order to have a good conversation. And by that, I mean people contradicting themselves at some point in the conversation, or not literally relaying information as a computer does in just perfect precision. There's a lot of digging through the confusion and ignorance and grammatical errors of a human to get to that beautiful core. Like, despite all that, there's still very often a treasure to be found in every conversation and every person.
Even if it's I don't want to be near this person, you can almost always learn something.
Yeah. Even if you're learning how not to be, right?
Well, I think the best... This is something that I as I'm growing up and as I'm becoming more and more full-fledged who I am. I think a valuable piece of information that I learned, I would like to pat myself on the back and say learned earlier than most people do, but I don't know that that's right either. But I think a valuable piece of information is that if you want to have a solid argument for something, if you want to have a solid position, you don't look up that position. You look up the opposite position and learn how to argue against the best case of that.
Steelmanning. Where you steelman the opposite side of the argument and your own.
Because you're more likely to find better arguments doing that. Or to change your opinion to have a better argument.
Yeah. Or just finding out you're wrong in the pursuit of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can do that back and forth too. Like if you're somebody who is not very good at arguing or not very good at whatever, but you can hear a good argument, even if it's like, okay, I have this slightly left-wing argument and then I listen to a right-wing argument. Oh, now I'm convinced of this. Okay, well now let me find the best argument I can against this. And you just kind of ping-pong your way up.
And that, it seems one of the best ways to do that is prioritizing truth over one party or another, or one argument over another. Because if you prioritize truth, then you're willing to change the beliefs you've had in the past.
And truth is not a binary. Truth isn't a binary, right? One party or the other, one gender or the other, one person or the other. You know, truth is always more complex than this or that.
One of the coolest ways to look at truth that I've heard described is to look at it as a constantly changing thing. And that you can, one form of truth might be the equivalent to a bronze axe, which it'll cut down tree, but it's going to take a lot of time and effort. Then you learn a little more, and now you have a metal axe, and then you have a chainsaw, right? And like the more you learn, it's getting better at cutting down the tree. But does that mean necessarily the bronze axe wasn't true? Maybe there was a lot that wasn't as efficient as the current model.
The handle might have been pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Development of truth over time.
Yeah.
What is reality?
You might give me a second? I'm going to hop in these bushes here for a second. Yeah.
He's going to go commune with nature.
Yes, I am.
Welcome back, sir.
All right. I'm going to sit like this now, I think. My knees are moist.
Your knees are moist?
Yeah, dude. I've been sitting like crisscross applesauce for...
Oh, the sweat belt? Yeah, I feel you. Okay. Where were we? Truth, reality. Okay. I will say... Okay, here's a funny one. How do you define truth?
That is a good one. Truth is kind of like porn. I don't know that I would know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Wasn't that like a court adage from a judge?
Exactly, yeah.
But I know it when I see it. Practical and action. What is one of the best things you've ever done or seen another person do? And I don't mean seen like on the news. I mean like in your own life.
With my own eyeballs.
And feel free to toot your own horn.
Yeah, I know. I don't have any horns to toot at this point. You know, or not that I would. I mean, maybe I do. Maybe if somebody were to look at my life objectively, they'd be like, wow, this is the most amazing person that's ever lived. But I certainly, you know.
Or even just for a moment. Being amazing for just a moment.
Being amazing for just a moment. I don't know that I have a real good answer for that. I gotta be honest. And I'm kicking myself for not having a good answer for that. But I don't know that I do.
You're good. Just whatever you define as good. And it doesn't have to be some extravagant, someone dove off a bridge to catch a falling baby and then hung on by one toe. Like, it doesn't have to be.
That would be extravagant.
That would be.
To jump off and catch yourself with one toe?
Mm-hmm.
And in the time frame it would take to catch a baby? That is impressive.
That is quite impressive.
Not even two toes, one toe.
Mm-hmm.
And plays a leg is dangling. That's balance. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen so many amazing things, but for one moment...
You say you've seen so many amazing things?
I'm talking about shows now. I think pretty much.
That might count. That kind of counts. That's a pretty amazing thing to put on a great show for someone. Add some beauty to their life.
To have your heart in it. You know what I mean? There's a communication thing that happens there that it doesn't happen anywhere else. There are other mediums that you can communicate to people honestly, but music is something different. I think it's
okay. So tell me about one of the greatest music shows you've ever seen.
All right, let me actually take this opportunity to plug my boys then, because I've got some very good people that I have become friends with in the last 6 months or so, and I have seen every performance that I could have of theirs, and I got to tell you, I feel like live music, like these guys. The band's name is The World Without Us.
The World Without Us.
The World Without Us. Metalcore shit, but they're top-tier musicians and really good people, and I've got to say that every time I see them, they blow me away. And I have seen a lot of performances in my life, but there has never been a band that I have seen consistently that has consistently blown me away like they do. Period.
Wow, what does it mean to be blown away? Where you're just so in awe of it, you're so absorbed into it while the show is going on, like you're on this wonderful emotional high, you're wrapped into every second.
So I mentioned earlier that sometimes when I go to shows, when I go out to spend time with people, when I go out, it can sometimes be a struggle to be present. Good music takes away that struggle because you can't help but be right through there, right?
Fuck yeah.
What the hell else would you pay attention to?
Yeah.
They're really good at that. And I've seen so many good shows in my time in Philadelphia and even just in my life. But I don't know. I've seen some big acts that blew me away, but I didn't see them like consistently do it, you know what I mean? Because you can only pay $130 to go see a band one time, right? But as far as people on the come up right now, I've got to say that World Without Us is my favorite. Dark Water's End would be another one of those. They're another proggy metal band, but every time I've seen them live, they have blown me away. Really, I mean, like I said, I love hanging out with people that I can learn something from. Those guys scare the shit out of me because I know I'm never going to be able to do that way. Yeah.
They've tapped into some fucking magic.
Yeah. They make me certain that I have to go another direction because to go in their direction would be suicide.
Fucking witnessing greatness. Man, that seems like that's one of the best things in life. To just see something that pulls you in and not in a way where it's a puppeteer and there's abusing me and controlling me. Like, no, this is something that I want to be pulled into. This is something I want to be absorbed by. This music. Man, I've heard someone say that no matter who you are, everyone likes music of one sort or another. Whether you're a Nazi, whether you're in a refugee camp, whether you're a hunter-gatherer, whether you're a politician, whether you're us, music just hits some note of making... I've heard described as almost a Mandela in motion. Have you ever seen a Mandela? You've definitely seen them. They're very common. Symbol. I've heard them described as like the symbol of the self revealing itself, unraveling. They look kind of like a flower in bloom.
Okay.
Something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like seeing that in motion, the perfect order of prosperity. I don't even know if that's exactly the right way to say it, but it's almost like life becomes obviously worth it when you see something like that.
I wonder, and this is a little more back to the science tinfoil hat thing. I wonder if there's not some way in which auditorily, because language has such an effect on people, music has such an effect on people, I wonder if there's not some way to hijack a greater human function that we don't quite have a grasp of with auditory things.
I bet there's a game called Far Cry. And in one of the games...
I'm very familiar with Far Cry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you ever fought the cult in the one in America?
Oh, I don't. I have PS3. So
oh, right.
Far Cry 4 is my
Voss, though?
Yeah, Voss.
Yeah, you know. Okay, but when you're fighting this cult in America, every time you go to an outpost, they're always playing music. and the cult has its own music. And it sounds nice, and it's very catchy. And I've noticed myself humming it sometimes after playing, and a lot of the songs will repeat the messages that the cult promotes. So in a sense, you're constantly thinking about it, reinforcing it with a positive emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I can look at sex culture. Sexual songs are extremely popular nowadays. Doja Cat, The Weeknd, Cardi B, the list goes on and on of songs that kind of program you to just think about like
Party
lust,
and fuck are
porn.
gonna be the two biggest song topics always. I mean, party and fuck sell.
They fucking definitely sell. And then somehow, it's interesting to note, this kind of gives me a hope that not all the music is propaganda to sell some consumer product. And for that, I would say like The Sound of Silence. A song like that where, that hits some deep note in my heart. And it's a dark, beautiful note. And somehow it's still gotten incredibly popular.
There are some things that just break through.
Yeah. That's a great quote. There's some things that just fucking break through.
You know, even through all the bullshit. No matter how much bullshit they stack on top of really good music, every once in a while, something gets through.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
The entire game.
A revolution, maybe? Not necessarily, but just something that breaks through.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're not far from that now.
With what?
Revolution. We're not far.
That's one of the things I really wonder.
Well, the only reason I think we aren't... The furthest distance we have to go is organizing. People are not organized.
Do you think there's a strong enough desire?
Not yet. Give the Supreme Court a couple more weeks. Because they're going to start tearing away our rights like it's nothing. I mean, contraception is next. That'll happen this year. You know? And then once you take away sex stuff, you start going for sexual preferences. And then when you're done with that, you start going for race. Typically speaking, when fascism has arisen, the people lose their rights in the reverse order that they gained them. Yeah.
I really wonder, because it's one of those strange one step at a time things where you adapt to a change that if you were to look at it over a long period of time, it's obviously an extreme shift. But while you're in it, in the moment, it seems slow, gradual.
The ratchet effect. It's on purpose. It's very purposeful. So what they do is they will have a guy... Trump is the hyperbole of this guy who will take away your rights, create more wars, start moving us in that direction. And then they'll have a guy, and Biden is again a hyperbole of this, where he'll sit with his thumb up his ass and say the things he needs to say, and it will seem not so bad. But in reality, nothing has gone backwards. It has only moved towards fascism, right? In that, so what they're doing is, as opposed to just doing what they want to do with this country, they are taking their time with it, because if they lower the bar for life standards slowly, people will put up with more.
Man, I sometimes struggle with my optimistic side. Wondering,
yeah, no wonder.
Because I don't want to blind myself to darker realities. So yeah, sticking to realist. And that's a dark potential. Definitely gotta keep my eyes peeled for it. I've thought about getting involved in more local politics. I've thought about that being...
That's the way forward, I think.
I've heard a lot of people say that.
You can't change national politics. I mean, besides the game is rigged, like, you know, we've got... it's very hard to even tell how legitimate our voice is on a national level. But on a state level, it's a lot easier to measure. And you can definitely...
Who's going
you
for
can't always
mayor?
change the world, but you can make a corner of it pretty all right.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Then enough people make little corners of it all right.
Exactly.
Then someone maybe could break through. Like a beautiful song.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that foolishly and naively. I want to say that as a realistic possibility and maybe the best way forward. You ever hear of Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah, I know who Tulsi Gabbard is.
She's someone who I think could be a person to break through. She's someone I like and support as far as someone.
She's part of the crew, isn't she?
Which crew?
The AOC, then wasn't there a whole crew of politicians that played Among Us? A bunch of leftists played Among Us with Hassan Abi or something like that.
You mean Among Us the game?
Yes, I mean Among Us the game. And that's not how they became the crew, but there's definitely in neo-lib dem shit. There's definitely the crew, which is like the people who are going to carry us forward. And I thought, and I'm forgetting her name now, the person you just mentioned.
Oh, Tulsi
Gabbard. I thought she was part of it.
I
thought so.
I'm not sure.
But she's leftist, isn't she? Like, actually?
She's not extreme leftist, but she is on the left. She said a lot of things that the Democratic Party hasn't liked very much. She's been seen in some lights as a villain of the Democratic Party because of bucking the trends. She's very big on getting money out of politics, getting big money out of politics, which that seems like a huge infected wound that if we could just get the thorn out of that wound.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in America. Because I think it really does boil down to this. Our system is capitalism. Capital is another word for money. We are literally called moneyism. It's not going to happen. Yeah. As far as change, there was a point where we could have had the action and had the manpower to change the system as it is. I think that point is past.
When do you think that point was?
I would probably place it somewhere in the 60s, somewhere in the 70s. But even then, that's looking back to a time when I wasn't alive, and I don't know. The reality is money was probably always more powerful than people.
I don't know. One of the things that pops into my head is Eisenhower on his last speech before he left office. He was warning people against the military-industrial complex, which is a very strange thing to see a general president warning against the military-industrial complex because the concept of big business being wrapped in the military is a surprisingly recent, like literally being able to industrialize military and weapons and things along those lines. That seems to be a very recent development. And then combining that with their ability to influence politics through lobbyists and super PACs and things along those lines. That seems relatively new, although money has often been equated with power in the political realm.
Well, I mean, necessarily it is. You know, money is a slice of the world, right? If we were to ignore denominations of bills, if you were to categorize all of money as one category, then necessarily, because money can buy things, then each piece of money that you have is a correlation to things. So therefore, with all the money in the world, if you were to correlate that to all of the things in the world, the more money you have, the bigger the slice of the pie is yours, period.
Of the things.
If we were to agree that there is a set amount of money. Now that money changes and it changes in its worth, but that there is that it is possible feasibly, maybe not feasibly, but that it would be technically possible to have all of the money in the world. If that is feasible, then necessarily money is a piece of the pie.
It seems like the pie has been growing, though.
It hasn't, though. The slices have been getting smaller. It's not that there's more money, it's that money means less.
There's definitely inflation arguments, and I'm talking on a global scale, that I've heard some statistics talking about the pie in general being bigger, and that more people are able to have more because there's more to go around.
Where?
That I think, I need to get my specifics down, but the vague understanding is overall GDP has been increasing, even if you account for inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just showing that there's more money to be going around.
Maybe. I think it's probably they're slicing the pie up a little finer. I think that's probably what it is.
Politics, revolution,
Mm-hmm.
wars, society, prosperity.
Mm-hmm. War never changes.
Fallout.
What a great game, dude.
Yeah, indeed. And that always strikes me as a little funny and strange that within all these grand topics, there's, the personal thing, the living your own life. That seems very important as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Having your friends, getting the career that you like and you don't hate and all that.
Even with, everything being fucked. And everything is kind of fucked. You've got to have perspective, and you can only do so much. Now, I think that there are quite a bit of people not doing what they need to be doing, and I would include myself in that. But I think that, at the end of the day, life is short, and you've got to enjoy your time when you got it, because those are the memories you're going to have for the period of time that you're going to have them, And you've got to make sure that you have fun. It's not all about the grind, the hustle.
How to live one's best life. Okay. Oh, if you like steel manning the opposition's argument, I'll throw 2 books your way to counter the everything is shit argument, which is an important argument and something I definitely need to look more into. But 10 global trends, and it's a bit of a stuck-up title, but 10 global trends that every smart person should know. That's a great book to really quickly, compactly summarize important positive trends happening. And Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. Though if you want to see some good evidence that things are improving on a global scale, those are some 2 solid ones. Okay. What would be some recommended sources of information for me to steelman the opposite side, the side that things are actually getting really bad?
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I don't know. First of all, I'm really terrible at remembering sources.
Mm-hmm.
And usually information that I get, I will admit, usually information that I get is secondhand.
Gotcha.
Usually it's me actively listening to people that are smarter than me, saying things that they believe, and then drawing from that.
Gotcha. Do you have a podcast you like to listen to for something like that?
The Lex Friedman podcast, I think.
Oh, I love. Yes, yeah. I'm a great fan.
That's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ditto. What would be? I want to hit you with a nice closer podcast. In the spirit of Lex Friedman, I will ask you, what do you think the meaning of life is? As a closing question.
Now. To a degree.
Right? Because sometimes
and
you got to look to the future.
That's how I would put it now, ellipsis, to a degree. That's exactly how I would put it, yeah. I think that's exactly what it is. Because you have to be... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just mean... You have to be in the moment, but not so in the moment that you lose perspective.
Right? There is a point where you want to look to the past, analyze it, learn from it, look to the future, plan, prepare,
but
guess.
You don't want to dwell anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So be like Whatcha, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the key to life is to match perfectly every context.
Yes.
And be willing to be very adaptable.
I think the key to life is you have to be good at everything, and if you're good at not everything, then, what's the point?
Jesus Christ. Okay, so that does actually seem to be one of the parts of the human niche, is that we have a bunch of people who specialize in a very wide variety of topics. So in a sense, as a species, we could be considered good at everything. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but we kind of are.
We're definitely good at blowing each other up. That's definitely something we're really good at.
We are quite good at that, yes. Among other things, like these buildings are nice and sturdy.
Are they really? Have you looked at Temple lately? It's not really pretty.
Looks kind of good from here. The camera's good.
Yeah.
The microphones are good.
I know the view is good.
Yeah, especially with those cool glasses.
Yeah, right.
All right, Coop.
I would absolutely do this again, by the way. This
Fuck
is
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Ditto. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.